Hi. Before getting into the episode, I have something so exciting to share. My debut Christian romance novel, Finding Forevermore, is launching January 23rd on Kickstarter. This is a special pre order campaign with exclusive rewards you won't find anywhere else. If you want to get a swoony friends to lovers romance and maybe some extra goodies, please head over to the Kickstarter page link in the show notes and click Notify Me on launch so you can be the first to know when it goes live. I'm so grateful for your support. Now, on to the episode. Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Karen Witemeyer. Get ready to smile and swoon because Karen is known for her warm-hearted historical romances packed with humor, feisty heroines, and swoon-worthy Texas heroes. Karen was voted #1 reader's favorite Christian historical author in 2023 by Family Fiction magazine. Karen's a firm believer in the power of happy endings, and she joins us from her home in Abilene, Texas, to share her journey, her passion for storytelling, and maybe even a little bit about her love of cross-stitching, tea, and family game nights. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear all about our newest book giveaway. Now, here's my conversation with Karen. Hi, Karen. I am so happy to have you on the Christian Romance Podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Kelly. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it absolutely. I can't wait to hear more, and I can't wait for the listeners/readers to hear more about your new book. And just your style of writing is really exciting and really fun. So you have this historical, but you weave in these like fairy tale retellings, and it's so exciting. I cannot wait to hear more about your process and just how you got started writing just in general, because I love to see how God kind of pulls you into this craft, especially because I know you're a creative at heart because you like to cross stitch and you like to do different things. So why don't you just let our listeners know a little bit about you and about how you got started on your writing journey?
Absolutely. So, I got started in maybe a unique way. I don't know. I wasn't one of those young girls who just always, had a pen in hand and always wanted to write. That really wasn't me. I just loved to read. I would come home from the library with big stacks of books, and I would just hide away, and like my introverted self would just nestle down and would just go through as many books as I could. I loved story. I loved getting lost in story. And the stories that touched my heart the most had a historical element. So I grew up reading like Little House on the Prairie, Anne of Green Gables, all of those classics, and just really kind of fell in love with that escape to a different time period. And I thought, maybe someday I might try to write. This was as I got older, but it was always a faraway dream. It was not anything immediately attainable. So I went to college and I met my husband and we got married, got a master's degree, started having babies. And, I was like, okay, I'm very busy. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And then we found out that my husband's position was being cut. And I had this moment of panic. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, we have babies. We have to provide for our children. And I need to do something to help, provide for the family. And that's when it came to me. "Oh, I know, I'll write a book because that's a great way to make money right away." Very, very naive. Didn't know what in the world I was getting into. It took me 6 years after that kind of epiphany to actually sign my first book contract. But that was how God got me off of the someday path and put me on no, now is the time to start focusing on this. And so, I did all the things that people do. I joined online groups. I had a local group that I went to. I learned as much as I could about the craft. I started writing short pieces that then eventually kind of morphed into longer pieces. And then I finally had my first novel ready to go. Went to American Christian Fiction Writers Conference. This is talk about God moments. I mean, God knew that I was not going to be able to do this on my own, So it happened to be in Dallas that year. I live in Abilene, which is just about 3 hours away. And so I
Oh,
went early and I was like, you know what? I'm going to volunteer because I've heard that's a good way to, get to know people. And I'm so shy and I didn't really know what I was going to do. And so I went and I was put in this office and I was stuffing envelopes with, all of the, conference materials. And so I was there stuffing envelopes. There was a lady at the table next to me who was also stuffing envelopes. I had no idea who she was. My name is Karen. Her name was Karen. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. We have the same name. Then I started paying attention to how other people in the room were talking to her. This was Karen Schurer, who was an editor at Bethany House, which was like my dream publisher. And
awesome.
when I figured that out, I was like, what do I do? I mean, you're always told before conferences, you don't pitch in the bathroom. You don't do this. You don't do that. I'm like, I don't know if I should pitch my book or not. This doesn't seem like the right time. And so I waited and I just kind of, every time we would pass each other in the halls, I'd be like, hey, it's Karen. Hey, try to make that connection. And then I happened to sit at her table at lunchtime. And she was very sweet and allowed all of us at the table to kind of give our, 1 second spiel of what our book was about. And, she was very polite and listened to all of us newbie authors. And that would have been it because I wasn't going to do anything. But there was another lady at the table who, bless her heart, was braver than I was. And she asked, can we send you our proposals? And Karen, being the very sweet, kind person that she was, said, sure, go ahead. And so you better believe as soon as I got home, I was sending off that proposal. And so she got back to me. And of course, all of this takes place over a few months because publishing moves very slowly. But she received my proposal and she eventually said, hey, I'm liking this. Can you go ahead and send the full manuscript? And I was like, the heavens have opened. God has answered my prayer, right? Everything is just fitting together just perfectly until the rejection letter came. And I was like, oh no. But as far as rejections go, it was the best that could be because she said, we really like your writing, but this particular story is too similar to something we've recently published.
Oh,
And
yeah.
can you get us something else? And what she asked for was, now we really like one element of this story. There's this dress shop. Could you write us a book about this dress shop? Now you have to understand in the original manuscript, the dress shop burned to the ground on page 4. So this was not like I just could just go back and, tweak a few things and create a new story. No, I had to start from scratch because this dress shop was not even existent in the rest of the story. And so I did. I went back and I wrote that book, and that ended up becoming A Tailor-Made Bride, which was my debut novel with Bethany House. So it was one of those things where God just led me down the path with all of these little moments that just kind of gave me that little push. And when I was too shy to do it, he put other people in my life to help me. And I just thank him every day for, for opening those doors for me.
Oh, that is wonderful. I love to hear that because it is unique. It's your unique journey and how doors are opening and closing in certain aspects. I love that, it's so weird to think that your husband's job going away in that can be a blessing. But like in hindsight, right? Hindsight's always 2020, right? But like in hindsight, that may have been the real push that you needed to
Exactly.
the urgency of it, even though it's funny to say urgency, but then you say 6 years later. But which, spoiler alert, it takes a while to publish a book. This is why it's, we're like, oh my gosh, like this amazing book is like coming to life. And it takes a while, especially whenever you're plotting characters. And then it's so funny that you say too about the dress shop because you're like, I burned that thing to the ground 4 pages in, and now I gotta like make it come to life again, which is fun. And it sounds like it was an absolutely amazing story too. Very unique too, how you made it a bridal shop. Um, but it's just so weird. It's crazy to think that, obviously you don't want something to happen to your family like that, but then it pushes you into this. And now it's like kind of nudging you along the path and then making connections to volunteer with Karen. I mean, that's amazing, because now, even out of all the people at the table, you have the same name, she's going to remember you. There's at least something memorable there that you guys worked alongside each other in the little things. Like you were
Hmm.
faithful in the little things, right? Like just stuffing
Right.
envelopes, volunteering like, hey, I want to meet people. And I love that you were so aware of like the introvertedness. You're like, okay, God, I got to do something to get out of my shell, step off of the wall and
That's
be
right.
put yourself out there. I love that because you were working on that too. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did, to go to, I mean, writers conferences are funny because so many writers are so introverted, but the conferences are I consider myself an extroverted person. I love talking to people. I get that. I love their energy, but I will say, even for me, conferences and things like that are very tiring. You have to
Mhm.
go and regroup, and you go and you are just so drained, especially whenever you're pitching, like you said, like, should I pitch my book? Should I do, so I love your courage in that, and then how he just blessed it. I mean, look at you now. I mean, you're like a multi-award winning author. It's amazing. It's amazing. And obviously we know, this is something you were just meant to do, Karen. You were meant to do this. Even though, 'cause I think you have to be a really good reader, just love being a reader in order to be a good writer. You have to,
Yeah.
which I am a little bit of a slow reader. I have always been like a movie buff, but I'm more of a story buff now that I realize
Mhm.
too. So I have so many wonderful books like your new book that I can't wait to hear more about on my TBR list now, that I'm like, no, I got to sit down and read. I gotta read these stories because they're so fun. So how did you have a very unique style too, which I just want to, I can't wait to hear more about. So you do the historical, and that's kind of, it sounds like that's something that you kind of always just lean toward, like because of what you read, right? So you love the
Right.
genre, which is so fun too. I feel like writing in the genre you love, it adds an authenticity because what these stories, how the flow is, because historical's different. It really is than contemporary and other things. It has its own unique style, and you're very familiar with that, being an avid reader. But you do these feisty heroines, like fairy tale retellings. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you got into doing that? Like what kind of sparked that for you?
Sure. So, yeah, this latest series, the Texas Ever After series, is all fairy tale retellings, kind of reimaginings, if you will, because they are. In fact, I've had readers tell me, it wasn't until the very end that all of a sudden it clicked. I'm like, that was Snow White. How did I not know that was Snow White this whole time? And so they are kind of standalone stories, but for people, especially, so I grew up in the Disney era, right? And
Yeah.
I fell in love with all of the classic Disney romantic fairy tales. And so Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, of course, are the three like core ones that kind of gave Disney their fame.
Hmm.
And so as a kid, I mean, I had all the books, right? And I had one of those Fisher Price record players with the big LPs that, and I would listen to them all the time, and they would have all the music, and I loved music, and I would sing along to all the songs, turn the page and read the story. And it was a very nostalgic, happy memory for me of really enjoying those stories. And I've always loved fairy tales. I mean, that's why I write romance, because that's
Hmm.
what romance is. It's a fairy tale for the most part.
For sure.
And so it's one of those really happy, nostalgic things. And so when I was trying to, come up with ideas for what's my next series going to be, that's always kind of that moment of panic of like, oh, what am I going to do next? And so I was like, I love fairy tales. And I've seen fairy tale retellings done in like medieval historical settings.
Hmm.
I've seen them done, retold for contemporary stories. I've seen them in fantasy, type genres, but I really haven't seen very much done from a Western point of view. And that's kind of, my bread and butter. All my stories are set in the American West in Texas. And I thought, you know what? I bet I could give them maybe something a little bit fresh and a little bit new twist, and take it to Texas in the 1800s. And so then I just started plotting and had so much fun. So, I started with Fairest of Heart, which was my Snow White retelling. And one of the reasons why I picked that as my first one is because it has so many iconic um, points to the story that are so easily recognizable. So you have the seven dwarfs, right? Everybody knows the seven dwarfs. Well, I have 7 retired drovers at the Diamond D Ranch. So that's, that's how I incorporated that. It was so fun. I have a Texas Ranger hero, instead of Prince Charming. And I have, my heroine is the maid to a traveling actress who is very vain and very focused on outer beauty and all of that, and doesn't want to be outshone from, her maid, who is also pretty, even though she tries to kind of hide it. And so you have all of those classic elements that are just immediately recognizable. But I spin them in a new way, right? So I kind of bring new life to the story. And then Cinderella was my next one. If the boot fits. And as you can imagine, we kind of switched it around. So it's a Cinderfella story. The poor, down on his luck cowboy is the Cinderella type role. And the heroine is the daughter of the cattle king. So she's kind of the princess type role. And, there's this mysterious fellow who saves her brother's life and leaves his boot behind in the process. And so, of course, she's like intrigued. I will need to find out who owns this boot. And so, that kind of is the impetus of how it gets started. And so that was kind of a fun little twist on the story. It was very important to me to redeem the stepmother. I mean, poor stepmothers in fairy tales, they get such a raw deal. Oh my goodness. They're always the villain.
And there's some really awesome stepmothers out there.
Exactly. We have some loving, giving, self-sacrificing stepmothers out there. And I wanted to, redeem that role a little bit. So my stepmother in If the Boot Fits is a very loving, giving, generous-hearted person, and she is not the villain in the story. But it is kind of fun to see which of those characters does become the villain, and hopefully it's something that's a bit of a surprise to the readers. So that was a lot of fun for moving there. And then, of course, the next book that's coming out is Cloaked in Beauty. And this one, instead of just doing Sleeping Beauty, I started brainstorming with this one because I wanted, in the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty, right? She's the poor little baby is cursed by Maleficent, and you're going to prick your finger and die on your 16th birthday, and so the fairies whisk her away so that she'll be protected and safe and all of that. And then she grows up, innocent and beautiful, and then finds her prince. Well, okay, I still wanted that kind of backstory where there's danger and her life is in danger and she has an inheritance that she's going to claim. I upped the age a little bit, so at 21 instead of 16. And but she still has to be whisked away and raised, off in seclusion by herself. And I thought, well, I don't have fairies that are going to whisk her away because that doesn't work. So, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, for the story, it's important for the mother to remain where she is. And as a mother, I have 3 children of my own. And I was like, who in the world would I trust to send my young daughter away with, knowing that they have to, be living in seclusion? I'm not going to even know where they are. It's to protect her. But you also want someone who's going to raise her to have godly values and, all this kind of stuff. I thought maybe a grandmother, right? The woman who raised me, maybe that's who I would trust to take. And then I started thinking, grandmother in the woods with a little girl. This is starting to sound like another fairy tale. And so this is where Little Red Riding Hood came into the picture. And so I had a lot of fun mixing, kind of mash up those 2 stories together. So it's really kind of a Sleeping Beauty story with like an overlay of Little Red Riding Hood. So the little girl, Letty Hood, she grows up with
Letty. I love it. I love it. Letty is so cute. I love it.
It's short for Scarlet. So you have, the red going in there. So she grows up, with her dad passed away when she was young, but she remembers, story time where he would, give her this red hood to wear, and he would act out. He would be the wolf, and he would change the story. So the big bad wolf doesn't eat her. He becomes her friend and her protector and, this kind of thing, because, it's dad and he wants to create this happy story. And so when she goes away, she's in seclusion. She's not around any people. So she doesn't have any human friends except for grandmother. So she finds a wolf cub and she raises him. And then, of course, he becomes her best friend. And so we have the wolf character, Rusty, who is like the heroic wolf in the story. And then the villain is more of like the dragon that Philip, the Pinkerton hero, who he's not a prince, but he's a Pinkerton, has to battle this dragon in order to help save the day. So it was a lot of fun, trying to find unique ways to take those classic Disney type stories that we grew up with and then give them a Western spin and kind of a reimagining of how those stories might play out.
That is so fun. I love it so much. I can't even tell you like that, especially like having the mashup a little bit of those two. Because as soon as you see, and your book cover is just beautiful, but as soon as you see the book cover, you immediately go, oh, cloaked in beauty, like it's Little Red Riding Hood.
Yes.
But there's so much you can do there. And I love that you add in the wolf, but like a heroic, fun wolf, because it's always so fun when there's like a dog or an animal character,
Mm-hmm.
because there that adds so much fun and a lot of times humor and personality, like that's really cute. What about, no spoilers, but what about the romance? So how does that set the stage for the love story?
Absolutely. So in Cloaked in Beauty, it's kind of a road trip romance, if you
Oh,
will.
cool.
So the hero he's a Pinkerton. He's hired by mom to go find the daughter because mom doesn't even know where she's hidden because they wanted to make sure that, there was no chance that the bad guy was going to find her. And so she hires the Pinkerton to go find her and
Mm,
help her come back so that she can claim her inheritance. And hopefully they can finally cut off any. They're hoping that once she claims her inheritance, there's no reason for the uncle, who is the villain, to try to do her in because it's out of his grasp now. And so that's their hope. There's a few complications that get in the way, of course, but
a few roadblocks on that road trip.
so the main romance is this Pinkerton hero is bringing the heroine back home, and so they are journeying, but they don't want to take trains or anything where there could be other people around, and so they're still trying to be as hidden and in seclusion as possible. And so they're taking their time going back roads and cross country and all of this, and so they have a lot of time together. And of course, there are a lot of things that happen along the way that are going to help draw them together. And it's really funny because Letty has been growing up in seclusion. She has no experience with men whatsoever. And her grandmother, because Letty is going to be like one of the richest women in Texas once she inherits her father's estate, her grandmother has been coaching her on how to spot fortune hunters, right, and how to protect herself against those who
Mm.
would want to take advantage of her because of her wealth, and not care about her as a person. And so she's been coached about all these things to look for and all that kind of stuff. And so when the Pinkerton comes and they start kind of, having that attraction moments, happen, Letty, because she's so naive, I mean, she's super smart and courageous and brave, but she is kind of naive when it comes to interacting with people. And she starts to worry that she's taking advantage of Philip because there was one time where they had to snuggle together in a barn and then he rescued her wolf and she kisses him and she's like, "Oh, I'm one of those people that,
Aw.
that's, that's taking advantage of you, for you." And so she's having all these like insecure moments. And, of course, he is prejudiced against the rich because he's been hired by so many of them and see how corrupt so many of them are. And so, they both have these misconceptions that they have to, work through and then come to see who the other person is really at the core. And then, of course, that leads to love and many happy endings. So,
Oh, I know. Like we know that it's going to be, they have to get together, right? But
of
it's the
course,
how that's so fun. I love that because if he already he probably is like not wanting to go on this trip, right? Like because he's, knows how the rich people are and things like that. That kind of sets up him being like, just another one of these, thinking they're too good for everybody, and then sees this humble heart in her. I love
hmm
that. I think that's so great whenever they completely, you can't judge a book by its cover kind of thing,
exactly.
Um, and they see, the depth, but they can only do that if they were on this trip together, which is very
Right,
fun. And I love that the uncle is like the big bad wolf, kind of. Like he comes in and then, but there is a good wolf in it, who,
right, right.
it just sounds so cool. I love it. I love it. I think it's just so neat. And I know this book comes out in December, a little bit later December. So we'll definitely make sure to put the links in the show notes, actually, to all of your series too. I want to talk to you even a little bit the Cinder. First of all, you said Cinderfella retelling, and I've never heard that term, and I love
Really?
it. Yes, I love that. That is fantastic. I love that he like leaves this boot, and she has to be strong, right? If she's going to be helping him and she's searching for this guy, she has to be tough, So
Yep.
talk a little bit about their love story.
So again, we have kind of a as happens in a lot of these classic fairy tales. There's the rich and poor kind of dichotomy that's going on,
Yeah.
and so she was at school in the East and then returned home, and her husband, her father, has decided to throw a ball for her, to give her options on husband material, right?
Oh.
And so she is like so upset. She's like, this is not what I want. All these people are people that you do business with. I don't want to have anything. I want to pick my own husband. I don't want you picking my husband for me. And so she kind of starts off as being like super like, Dad, I don't want to do this. And of course that plays into the ball in the Cinderella story. And so we're kind of starting with the ball and then, moving on instead of ending with the ball. And so then the hero, who was not invited to the ball, he's there for his own purposes, and so then there's a whole scenario that happens. But she's intrigued by this man who had saved her brother, and so is off to figure out who that is. Well, in the course of her trying to figure out who this is, she meets him as himself. And he is the older brother. So he has two younger stepbrothers, like the two stepsisters that Cinderella had. So he has two younger stepbrothers, and one of them, because the stepmother, has been struggling financially, and who kicked her out of her home, but the cattle king who owned the property. And so there's some built-in conflict there between the two families. And so her older of the two younger sons, so I guess it's the middle son, has been working at the livery in order to make extra money, and he's been missing school. And so the heroine wants to try to do something to contribute to the community. And so she's very educated, and so she's like, I can help teach or do something. And so through the churches, they're able to get her hooked up with, okay, here's a young boy who's been missing school, who, he could use some tutoring. And so that's kind of how she gets into the hero's life, is through the brother. And so she's making friends with this family. But suddenly somebody is trying to kill her at the same time. So all of these random accidents start happening, and they usually happen when the hero is around. And so he is feeling like, I need to help you, and she doesn't know who she can trust. And so anyway, there's a lot of life and death danger going on in that story as well. And so as the two of them, find that time to spend together and realize it's more than just the economics and the family dynamics. There's genuine connections being made between the two people. Then that's when the love starts to develop.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love that you said it in like the historical, like you said, because there have been different retellings for different eras, like fantasy and different, ways. But yeah, the historical, it's so fun. And with your own spin of being in Texas, right? Like a
Right.
Western. That is just so neat. And I love how you use like right where you are, what you know in your own style, in your own voice, and you're sharing these beautiful stories, and people are just absolutely loving them because they're so neat. One of my favorites, Cinderella like retellings is Ever After. Have you ever
Oh,
seen
yes.
that with,
Yes.
and it is kind of historical and it's fun. It makes me
Hmm.
think of a little bit of how she wants to help people, kind of like that's how like Henry wanted to help. And that's it. I could see like some elements of that. And I like that you make the stepmother like struggling, like you feel bad, because I feel like anytime nowadays we hear stepmother, we're like, because
Yeah,
of these
exactly.
stories, right? Like, no,
Exactly.
no, anybody can be bad. But oh, that's fun. I can't wait. That is so, so neat. Um, we are almost at time, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about like when you with your site, you love to connect with your readers. And I love to see that. And I think it's just so nice to highlight the ways that you do and just the little bonus things that you have for readers right on your website. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I love interacting with the readers. I mean, that's the whole reason we write, right? Is to be able to
100%.
share these stories and make connections with people. And especially for introverted people, this is a great way to have those personal connections even across a great distance. And it's really a blessing. So yeah, I put a lot of bonus material on my website for usually there's different things that have fun with those different stories that are released. One of my favorite little tidbits that I add to with almost every book is called the name game. And it talks about
Oh,
how I name my characters because a lot of times there's a play on words happening with the characters. So for instance, we were just talking about the Cinderella story, right? So Cinderella, you have Cinder, and the hero is Asher because ashes and cinders are kind of the same. And then Ellis for his last name, and Cinderella. So Cinderella and Asher Ellis. So there's things like that, and of course with the Diamond D Ranch and the drovers for the Seven Dwarfs and Fairest of Heart, all of them have names that like pay homage to the Seven Dwarfs from Disney. So we have Dusty instead of Sneezy because he's always got hay fever, and and so just lots of little fun things like that. And so that's
so
kind of just
fun.
an extra like bonus that's fun for that. And then also I have a Facebook group called the Posse, and there's a link to that on my page, or you can just search for that in Facebook. And it is a wonderful, very active group. I'm there every day, Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock, usually posting at 2 o'clock Central, posting something. And we have fun. We all are book lovers. And so we talk about books. A lot of times I get them to help me come up with character plots, or it's like, okay, here's what my hero's description. Find me a cool looking guy, that, we can use as our model. And then we'll go and we'll let them vote and see, which one is the most popular. And so I really get them involved in the story process as well. And then we just, we have fun. Like right now, we're in the middle of our Christmas ornament exchange. So we
Aw.
sign up. We have, there's probably, I don't remember how many. I think we have maybe 120 or so people who are exchanging ornaments with each other. We even have some in Europe that are doing it, and so it's really fun and a way to kind of stay connected and to really not only give back to the readers, but they're giving me so much as well. Just that community and that support when I'm writing, and even just helping me brainstorm ideas can really be such a blessing. So yeah, I love it. I love hearing from readers. You can contact me through my website. So yeah, I love it.
That is so fun. And then you also do a contest, right? For those people that sign up for your newsletter. You do talk a little bit about your contest.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody who is a newsletter subscriber is entered automatically once a month for my giveaway. I give away 2 books every month, and they're usually books that are similar to my genre because I figure if you like me, you're going to like those books as well. So they're always Christian fiction, almost always historical, since that's what I write. And yeah, so every month I draw a new winner, and somebody gets 2 free books. So just sign up for my newsletter.
That's wonderful. I love that you do that so much because it also is nice because if somebody comes in through you or sees one of your wonderful stories, then like you said, I mean, if they like your stories, they might like this other author who they maybe never have even read. And I saw, for this month, you have the month of November, you have a Michelle Greet book, Amanda Dykes, I think it was one of her books
Hmm.
as well, which is just wonderful. I just love that so much, Karen. And it's so unbelievably fun. The name game. I have to participate. I'm gonna sign up for the posse. It sounds awesome. Because it's tough sometimes, especially keeping all your characters on track. But whenever you do the play on words, the Asher Ellis, oh my gosh, I love it so much. Oh, so fun, unbelievable. Um,
But yes, so we are, and I will have links to all of that. I will have links to your website and everything, your books in the show notes so that people, and your Facebook group, so that people can, all you listeners can go right there, right on your podcast app right now and sign up for the posse. I know I am definitely going to be signing up for the posse so I can get in there and see all those neat things and the ornament exchange. That's so sweet. I love that. How does that work? How does the ornament exchange work? Like people make, are they like making their own and then sending it? And it's like even internationally?
So when we first started several years ago, we've been doing this every year for several years, and it
Oh,
was all handmade was what we were doing, and so everybody would make something, and then we would exchange that. And then it got to the point where some people were like, "Well, I'm not really crafty, but I'd love to participate." And so now we have it open to where it can be handmade or it can be handpicked. So
oh, cool.
you can purchase an ornament or you can make an ornament and exchange with your partner. And we encouraged you to email your partner or message them through Facebook and get to know a little bit about them and maybe strike up some friendships. We've had a couple of people who have said that they've become great friends after
Aw.
being exchange partners. So yeah, it's fun and it's a way to just kind of build community and to have a little fun thing show up in your mailbox is always kind of fun. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's a whole purpose too, I think, behind the like I'll do a physical book giveaway each month for the podcast because there's something special, not to take away from like ebooks and things like different just readings or gifts, different things in that way. But I feel like there is just something special about connecting with people, something physical to remind you of it, or something that you can that's tangible. I feel like, we're such a virtual world, which I'm extremely grateful for. Do not get me wrong. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to meet like this. This is
exactly.
fantastic. But there is something special, especially when it's only one other person. People are paired together. And so it's not like you're buying, 20 ornaments for people, even though that would be nice too, but still, I just love it. I think it's so, it just, we need to do more of that, more of the like in person or just the genuine kind of connecting like that. I think it's really special. Before you go, Karen, I just like to ask you, with this, how God has kind of pulled you back into or pulled you into this writing journey. What was there ever a verse that kind of guided you through the difficult times and through rejections? Whether that sounds like a positive rejection you got for your book, but we know, rejection is rejection. It's hard. It's hard to stomach, and a lot of times too, even outside of that rejection, but just having the courage and having the consistent showing up every day, it can be tough because there's real things that happen in life, right? Like family, issues and traumas and things that can happen. So is there a verse that maybe has really anchored you throughout that journey, or even a verse that you like to tie to these fairy tale books like Cloaked in Beauty?
There's so many that that have
There's
helped me
so
along the
many. I
way. Yeah.
know.
I'd like to mention two. The first one, because you talked about rejection, especially
Mm,
Philippians 1:6, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. That brings me so much encouragement because he's the one that nudged me into starting this. And I
yeah.
don't have to rely just on myself to accomplish it. Every book I am praying, give me the right words, give me the right ideas, build something creative within me to express on this story. He's the one that's bringing it to completion. It's not me. And it's a partnership, you know. And then I have one, I don't know if this is a video or not, but you can see my mouse pad that I
Oh.
have. And so I made this several years ago because it's one of those things that kind of grounds me and reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's from First Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. And
Mm,
it says, "But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the message of the gospel, even so we speak, not to please mortals, but to please God, who tests our hearts." And so this reminds me, especially when you get like negative reviews
mhm.
or, people are lashing out about something, it reminds me that as much as I am writing to encourage readers, I'm writing because this is what God has called me to, and He's entrusted me with a message. And I write to please Him first and foremost, not to please people. And it helps me to remember that it's not necessarily about what the people are saying. It's how I am honoring God through what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that because it's just so true and it's just so beautiful. I love that you have it on your mouse pad. It's such a good idea. As soon as you held that up, I'm like, that's a great idea. I got to do that too. You're giving
You
me
see
so
it
much
every day.
inspiration. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. Because sometimes, every day is its own little beast, right? Every day. That's why he says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has worries of its own. So every day it's a good reminder. But yeah, it's so true. And I love that you are guided by that because it is hard in writing and in anything really that you're trying to do, and all we do for the Lord first. And it's such a great reminder. So thank you so much for that encouragement. I love that. And thank you so much for being here, Karen. This has been such a pleasure. Absolutely. I will put your links and everything in the show notes, like I said, and you got to come back and talk more about your wonderful stories.
I would love to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share the episode with one book lover like yourself. We love to bless as many people as we can with exclusive interviews and, of course, great books. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a selection of Christian romance novels and some extra goodies, too. This month's theme is Winter Hearts. You'll get 5 physical books from romantic suspense to rom-coms set in a cozy, wintry setting. Perfect to curl up with a hot cup of coffee, right? Whether you're listening right as the episode comes out or in the future and don't want to miss out on the giveaway, no worries. You'll find the link to the current giveaway on our website, christianromancepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.